the first thing I like to do with my podcast is ask you about your younger days. You know,
Sure.
similar to in age where I am now, obviously
Hmm.
networking to get into the basketball world when I'm done. So for
Yeah.
you, in college and maybe even before that, was it always basketball that you wanted to be a part of, or how did you kind of, find your path?
Yeah. I knew from a really early age that, basketball came really easy to me from a mental standpoint and understanding X's and O's. And just, as a player, I wasn't overly athletic. I was a good shooter. I was a pretty skilled guy. But, the only way that I could even remotely compete at a high level was to be intelligent and to know, how to do things, to try to offset, uh, you know, physical disadvantage. So, my dad was a coach and I played for him and, growing up, and he was always in the gym. And when you grow up in North Carolina, especially when I grew up in North Carolina, you know, Dean Smith was a really big figure. And,
Yeah.
so for me, I kind of wanted to grow up and be a combination of my dad and Dean Smith. And, that's basketball is all I ever wanted to do. And, when I got into college, playing was never going to be in the cards for me. So, when I was at Wingate University, not too far from here, I had an opportunity while I was still in school to join the staff, and do some things from a coaching standpoint. I actually did a little bit of recruiting, did a lot of scouting,
Mhm.
did some things in practice, some things on the floor. I got the opportunity to do a lot of skill development stuff, and I honestly did a lot of the strength conditioning stuff with our program at that time as well. So that's when I knew that what I was doing was pretty good, and I was
Right.
a little ahead of where I probably should have been at the time. But it's also where I figured out that I would probably be better on my own in
Okay.
basketball than I
Yeah.
than I would be with a program.
Interesting. So, um, I'm just curious, what did you major in college?
Sports management.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting that you say your dad coached you all the way up. My same with me. So obviously just
Hmm.
being in the gym like all the time is something that, you never get sick of if if I guess.
Yeah.
So now obviously you're Steph's trainer.
Hmm.
I kind of want to ask you, that's not the only thing I want to ask you about, but that's where I think I saw you on, some form of social media, and what you're doing is really cool. And I'm just curious, how did that relationship start?
That started the lockout season of 2011. We had a bunch of guys here in the Charlotte area that were working out. Steph was rehabbing an injury, and so was Gerald Henderson. We had a group of guys. We went over to Johnson C. Smith to work out one day. I had met Stephen the day before at a rehab at a physical therapist office where we had some of our players rehabbing. Didn't think much of it at the time, and then the next day we were on our way to JC Smith, and I got a text from Gerald Henderson asking me if Stephen Curry could come that day, and I said that was fine. And this was before it was Steph's second year.
Mhm.
So I said, yeah, that's fine. And, just paid him a lot of attention that day and did things I knew that, um, you know, would really translate well to how he played and talked to him about the things that he wanted to add to his game. So worked out pretty hard that day and just told him at the end of the workout if he wanted to do it again, just to let me know. And he actually called me that night and said, can we go at 7 a.m. tomorrow? We've been working together ever since then. It's been kind of crazy. It started there at JC Smith, and it's literally taken me around the world with him. We've
Right.
gone everywhere, from Asia to Europe, back here all over the United States. So it's been in Canada. It's been an amazing journey and a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's absolutely a really cool story. So I'm curious about, before you got Steph,
Hmm.
as a client, who were some guys that you were training? Did you start off local, or how did the process of your clientele?
I had started. Um, I had started this facility Accelerate in 2009,
Okay.
and we'd had a lot of high school and college guys, and
Mhm.
then even we had quite a few like middle school programs and high school programs as well. But just I still had a network from when I was coaching at the college level, so I
Right.
still had those guys. We're sending players down to get workouts in. That's kind of how we started. But even before that, I started training players when I was in high school. I
Yeah.
started training, 10, 11, 12-year olds when I was 17 and 18. So this is something that I've been doing for over half my life. kind of telling you how old I am. I've been doing this for about 25 years now.
Mhm.
So it's been a while, and you learn and you get better, and you figure out how to address players' needs in different ways as you go, and you just you got to be committed to being a lifelong learner. That's the most important thing when it comes to being effective in this sport is you got to understand that the game is constantly changing,
Right.
science is constantly changing, more information is becoming available every single day, and if you think it at any time, if you think you know it all, that's the time that people like me pass you.
Yes, sir. I love that. So going into that, right? The game, obviously, more than anyone, the game is changing, every single year.
Yeah.
So how have you changed your training methods, first of all with Steph, as he's gotten progressed in his career?
Well, I mean, we're real big on sports science, and I'm as much a strength and conditioning coach as I am a skill coach.
Right.
So, it's finding ways to blend those two concepts together to come up with the most efficient way to train a player, especially a guy that's now 12 years in the NBA. We can't spend a lot of time doing things that aren't going to net us a lot of benefit. We want to
Right.
make sure that everything we're doing in every workout is moving us in a positive direction. So, um, it's having a really superior knowledge of the body is very
Yeah.
important, especially when it comes to shooting the basketball. So, I think when I was earlier in my career, I was pretty much like everybody else, talking about their hands and and a lot of things from a mechanics standpoint from the waist up. But over the years, the biggest thing that I've changed is everything starts from the ground. So we start with your feet and we move to your brain and we go back down. So feet to the brain, brain to the feet. And you have to understand how movement mechanics operate. You got to understand what joint mobility means, what flexibility means, understanding what asymmetrical power output is from with your legs, understanding how to correct those things before you can even begin to talk about how to correct shooting mechanics, because those are the things that cause shooting issues. So if you can't address movement mechanics, if you can't address joint by joint responsibility, it gets really hard to help players shoot the ball better, because all you're doing is talking about their hands. Their hands are simply a result of what happens below your waist, and if you can't correct those things first, you'll never get anybody consistent above the waist.
That's good stuff, man. And I'm curious, something that fascinates me about the way you train, Steph is like, you do a lot of the band work, right? The band
Hmm.
resistant stuff that I see on your Instagram. So I'm just kind
Some
of,
of that,
I
yeah.
want to ask you, yes, I'm right. I'm just kind of curious, where did you get those methods? I know that you're big on, like you said, the human body. Is that something
Hmm.
that goes into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the quickest way to help somebody learn a new skill or correct the movement pattern is to cue the movement with light loading. So, if you've ever wanted to work on your first step, the first thing we do is we get you in that position. We teach you how to step, and then we add some sort of a load to that step, right? It's the same thing. If you want to correct something, or if you want to teach somebody how to do something quicker with the ball, or from a skill standpoint, you just simply you load it, but you have to load it lightly. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of trainers make, or a lot of coaches, is they don't understand the concept of light loading versus overloading versus unloading. They a lot of times you see them, providing way too much resistance, and that actually has a negative effect, because you're going to teach an incorrect movement pattern. So, we've been using that. We use the Vertimax tools a lot when
Okay.
it comes to trying to add new things. A lot of people think of the Vertimax as something you use to increase your vertical leap. While it is very effective with that, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you can
Right.
do with that equipment. So, we use that to help teach and make corrections. And you just have to understand how players learn, and different players learn in different ways. And the way that I work with Steph is different than how I work with Cam Reddish. How I work with Cam Reddish is different than how I work with Michael Porter Jr. How I work with Michael Porter Jr. is different than how I work with Damian Lee. So it's 100% individual based, and it's all off the needs, and because everybody has different limitations.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different learning pattern, and we have to be able to identify all those limitations and those learning patterns to come up with a comprehensive and efficient skill development roadmap for each player.
So obviously you said, conditioning, is a part of your workouts. Is
Mhm.
that something you mainly focus on, with shooting the ball, or do you kind of separate it, like do conditioning on its own, or do you kind of mix the
Yeah.
two?
Well, conditioning is the single greatest limiting factor to player development. And if players are not in shape, they can't work at game speed, and they certainly can't work with perfect mechanics. So, the first thing at the very bare minimum, base level, you have to be in great shape, and that's year round. The rule we have with Stefan is you have to be. If you had to play a game 2 weeks from now, you should always be ready to play. You should be able to get ready to play in 2 weeks. So you can never let yourself, from a cardiovascular, from a physical conditioning standpoint, get to the point to where you couldn't be ready to play in 2 weeks. So that's the base level, because it's, if player A is in shape well enough to work for an hour at full speed with perfect mechanics, but player B can go for 90 minutes at full speed with perfect mechanics, player B is automatically getting 50% better on a daily basis than player A. So that's how we look at that. So you always have to be in shape so that you can actually work to be better in games.
So I know you train, some of the younger generation. I've seen, Jalen Green in your gym a couple
hmm
times. How is working him out?
It's good because it's a different challenge. There's a lot of learning that those guys are doing, and it's fun because they're so physically gifted. I mean, a kid like Jalen, there's really nothing that he can't do in a workout, or there's nothing he can't do on the floor. But it's teaching them how to be process oriented. It's teaching them how to create a daily process and system that they work through to keep themselves ready to play at all times. And so there's a lot of that goes into working with younger players. And like I said, the same thing with Cam Reddish, same thing with Michael Porter
Yeah.
Jr. It's those guys are so talented. It's really just teaching them how to be pros, and how to be pros in the NBA for a long, long time and make a lot of money. And there's a difference between guys that get drafted and stay in there and they play until their rookie deal is up, and then they start going on these 1 year deals, versus guys that play and then all of a sudden they get multiple, multi-year guaranteed deals. Those are two different levels of players, and you want to be that second level. And you have to learn how to be a pro to do that.
Yeah. So a picture I came across was Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, and Jalen Green,
hmm
working out with you. Just kind of just take me in that workout for a couple, like a minute or two. How was that?
Yeah. It was a really interesting workout because it's the first time I'd really come across Luca. I'd been working Jalen out for a little while at that point. Obviously, I'd been working with Steph for many years at that point, but it's the first time we saw Luca, and it was interesting to me to watch Stefan's reaction to everybody, because it's the first time where he kind of stepped into a mentorship role, where I saw him really embrace the idea of teaching and showing guys things, and just to watch him try to teach and show the footwork concepts that we operate in every day to Luca and Jalen was kind of fun, because I actually heard him trying to teach it the same way that I teach it. So that was kind of interesting for me. But that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of talent in the room that day. I learned a lot because, again, three different guys, honestly, three different skill sets, three different body types. So it required me showing things differently to each one of them. So it was kind of a challenge that way, but it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of people in there that day. It was a good time.
Yeah, I bet it sounds fun. So now obviously Steph's been with Under Armour, so you've gotten to, do the events or go to the events that he's been at. So
Yeah.
I've seen, at
hmm
the Steph Curry select camp. Just kind of tell
hmm
me, a few events that you've been, basketball events that you got the opportunity to go to that kind of stick out.
Well, yeah, I mean, our select camp, when we have it every year, is a lot of fun. We typically have two, three, four lottery kids there, on a yearly basis, and that's kind of evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve when we get, post COVID. The underrated tour that I do with Steph, where we're going and we're trying to locate kids that haven't been, identified yet in the recruiting process, and trying to give them more of a platform. That's a lot of fun. As far as the NBA stuff, I mean, those events are kind of crazy. I've been to finals, all-star games, draft, I mean, anywhere,
Yeah.
you could be. I've had a chance to do that. So that's been a lot of fun. We did the Curry Asian tour, where we went,
Mm-hmm.
from the Philippines to China to Japan. And then we actually flipped that tour and went right to Europe. So we had an Asian and a European tour back to back, where we went to Paris and London, and then we were back in San Francisco the next day or two later, and we were working out. So it was kind of a whirlwind tour we went on there. So got a chance to do a lot of things, and it's been great every step of the way.
All right. I want to, leave you with one final question. Uh,
Sure.
you are in the gym with, the best shooter of all time, Steph Curry.
hmm
What is something that you've seen him do, in a workout that just has amazed you?
There's something every workout, to be honest. I mean, there's not a workout that goes by where I don't catch myself kind of getting mesmerized by the flight of the ball like everybody else, about the consistency and just how much of a machine it can be. So I mean, that's a hard one to answer. That's probably honestly one of the more common questions I get, and probably the toughest one I have
Yeah.
to answer, because there's been so many things. But you know, some of the drills and things that I've designed for him to get through, that in my head when I designed them, I was thinking this probably can't be done, but I'm going to give it to him anyway. And it never fails. He accomplishes it every time. So, you know, we had a session. Actually, I talked about this on Tom Haberstroh and Amin Al Hassan's podcast a couple weeks ago, but I'll bring it up again. We had a drill we did in London called Perfection, and we actually were leaving London to come back to the United States, and so we had a deadline we had to be done by. And you know, perfection, we have a rule, if you we can't leave the gym until we win the drill.
Mhm.
And the way it works is it's 7 spots alternating range, so 3 and 2, 3 and 2, so 7 spots around, 7 spots back. You have to make all those shots, so 7 spots around, alternating threes and twos, 7 spots back. Then you got to go to the free throw line. You got to make 10 straight free throws, and 6 of those can't touch the rim, and that's perfection. So we got, you know, seven. We would get close, and then you know we'd miss one and start over again. We get close, and this went on for an hour, maybe more. We got all the way around, and I think he hit the rim on the 10th free throw make, and we had to start again. So he actually won the drill, but he hit the rim. We had to start again. So you know, just the toughness that he has to um, continually go through these drills and never quit is probably the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. The mental resiliency that it takes to hear me explain the drill, hear it in my voice that I think is probably impossible, but to still stick
Yeah.
with it until we get done. That's the most impressive thing about him.
All right, coach. Thank you so much for answering a few of my questions, and best of luck in the future.
All right, man. I appreciate